Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to FGCU. My name is Eric Ginsko. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Mathematics, and I was asked to do a short video on the professional development plan and the annual professional development report. We really love our acronyms at FGCU, right? We have the New Faculty Academy, NFA, PDP is a professional development plan, and APDR is the annual professional development report. So important things to keep in mind in regards to the professional development plan and the annual professional development report are the following dates. September 7th is when you need to have your professional development plan signed and agreed upon by both parties. So that means that you need to be getting a PDP to your department chair relatively soon, and I would recommend scheduling a meeting and talking it over with your chair. And get honest feedback too. I think most chairs, if they're good chairs, will tell you whether or not they think you're being too ambitious or if you're playing it too safe as far as putting together a professional development plan. The other really important date for you new faculty to remember is that the annual professional development report, the thing that you're going to report on, like what you did with your plan, that's due March 31st, which is before the spring semester is over. So whatever plans you put into your professional development plan, you need to make sure that they're attainable in the next 5 to 6 months. And, the first year, I mean, every year, but definitely in the first year, the next 5 to 6 months is going to be a crazy time machine where it's just going to fly by. So don't put anything too ambitious in there this first year. I'd say play it safe. Okay. Then April 30th is when your evaluator should have your annual report back to you with an evaluation. And I'll show you what that evaluation is going to look like in just a second. And then May 6th, you have to start writing your next PDP for the following year. So your draft is due to your chair then. And, these deadlines, depending on which department you're in, which college you're in, these have either been hard or very soft deadlines. I mean, I think I've known faculty that don't have their annual reports in until mid-July, but that's kind of dependent on who your supervisor is. So these are the dates that you should have in mind, because these are the ones that the provost's office are expecting our administrators to follow. Okay, and then finally, June 5th is when you get your final evaluation to the dean. So I guess there's some wiggle room in here. So that's all I had for as far as important dates. I'll flash this slide again up at the end of this presentation just so you have these. And I should also say that if you're 12-month faculty, these dates are slightly different. As a rule of thumb, they're about 3 weeks later. So if you're a 12-month faculty, you have to go look that up on the provost website. But a general rule is 3 weeks after these dates. Okay, so here's just a little bit of friendly advice before I show you what my PDP typically looks like. And the first is that you should list goals that are within your control. So rather than saying that I'm going to secure a grant, I would say that I will write a grant. Or if rather than say I'm going to publish a paper, I'm going to say I'm going to submit a paper, because at least that's within my control. I have no control over how long a referee report is going to take. I also recommend aligning your goals with the vision and mission of your department, college, and the university, So maybe look online at the vision and mission statements of these different places and see where they align with your goals. And I'll give you some examples of that in my PDP in a second. And then this is a key one, is leave room for exceeds expectations. And so when you get your evaluation, there are only 3 criteria: did not meet expectations, met expectations, or exceeds expectations. And if you list 25 things in your professional development plan and you just tick off all 25 of those boxes, then you're really just meeting expectations. And so it's not a bad idea to list a few things and then have a few more in your back pocket that you're pretty sure you're going to get done, and you can report on those in your annual report. And that's exceeding expectations because you went above and beyond what you had in your PDP and what your department chair and the dean had signed off on. Finally, I would recommend keeping a folder on your desktop that lists your professional activity throughout the year, and set a few calendar reminders throughout the academic year to go back and look at your PDP and make sure that you're checking those boxes, and also that you're documenting how you're checking those boxes. And you can even start writing your report. It makes writing the report a little bit less painful in the spring if you're doing it throughout the year. Okay, so next I wanted to show you exactly what a PDP looks like. Okay, so this is a copy of my PDP, my professional development plan this year. And I use a template in a PDF template, but there's a Word document on the Provost website that you can download, and that's actually what I use for my annual report. I'll show you that in a second. So this is the professional development plan. They always have this one paragraph that says that this is going to be the basis for your evaluation. Um, let's see here. You should have your name, the academic year, your college, and your department somewhere. Again, the template has that. And then it's going to have a box where you can put some long-term goals. And these are my goals for the next 3 to 5 years. And these have stayed pretty consistent throughout the last 5 to 6 years for me. To continue to pursue excellence in teaching by implementing evidence-based teaching practices. These are my teaching goals, I should say. And to foster an active learning environment that cultivates habits of lifelong learning and helps the students to learn process skills that will aid them throughout their careers and everyday lives. So some of these words are words that show up in the FGCU mission statement: lifelong learning and student-centered learning. I think pursuit of excellence in teaching, evidence-based practices. Those all might be things that show up in the mission statement of either my department, my college, or the university. These are what I call tasks, because these are just 2 things that are on the provost template that are really not hard to do. They're just things you're expected to do. So you're supposed to check those 2 boxes. So they're not really objectives so much as tasks. This is my course assignment that my department chair and I agreed upon earlier in the year. So I know exactly which classes I'm teaching. And then my objectives for the year in teaching, well, okay, so one says, I'll just paraphrase this. I'm going to implement some exercises that foster team-based learning, inquiry-based learning, active learning. Again, this is student-centered learning. And then I'll collect feedback from the students. So that's one important thing that I always try to do, is get feedback from the students, either through SPOI or midterm surveys. And then I'm going to document that in my annual report by actually including some of the responses in the SPOI questions or through the surveys in my annual report, like as a documentation thing. To accompany so I'm going to make some workbook pages, and I'm also going to make some instructional videos. So again, you'll see in my annual report that I'll have some examples of that. And finally, I'm going to invite 2 of my peers to observe my classroom to identify areas of potential growth and innovation. So that's something I try to do every year. I try to get a few people in my classroom to observe, and I also try to observe other people's classes, because I find that I learn more by observing other people than I do by having someone else observe me. But those are just my goals for teaching for the year, and this has always sufficed in my department. So keep it short, 2 to 3 goals. For scholarly contribution, scholarship, professional development, again, this is a blank form, so it's kind of, I don't know, it's vaguely worded intentionally so that people can say what their professional development is, depending on what their roles are in the university. But mine are to maintain an active research program that benefits students and the mathematical community, and I try to foster both undergraduate and graduate student research collaborations. Again, trying to help my students grow and become better mathematicians. And then the actual objectives for the year, I'm going to try and submit 1 paper. I'm going to facilitate at least 1 student research project, and I'm going to apply for some research or travel support. Most years that's easy to do. This year, travel support's a little hard, but I've already secured 1 grant over the summer to work with some students. So I guess I've already checked off some of these boxes, because this is already this is the end of August. So you got to remember that when I wrote this, I wrote it in May. So I was thinking, okay, I hope I'll have these things done throughout the summer. And I could already say that some of these things are already checked off in August, which is, I guess I'm in a good spot there. Okay. Finally, there's also a service section. Service is typically not hard to come by. In yours, you may want to put that you're going to be participating in New Faculty Academy. That should account for your service for 1 year. Or at least through the fall semester, and then any other committees that you might be serving on or things that you might be doing in the community. Again, keep it short and sweet, and then make sure that you get this signed by your chair and then your dean. Sit down and have a conference with your chair, especially your first year, and make sure that everything looks in order and you're not being too ambitious. Okay, so that is the PDP, or my PDP, and then this is a previous year's annual professional development report. You can see that it looks almost exactly the same. We had the long-term goals that you just copy and paste, and then the individual objectives that I had for that year. I guess I had 4, and you can see there I'm just going through and saying that I've finished those. And of course, I'm not just saying that they're done. Then there's a reflection where I give evidence that I've covered those things, right? So these are the people that I invited into my classroom, that I observed. These are the people that I observed. These are the people that observed my teaching. This is my involvement through the Lucas Center. And then I start talking about different classes, and you can see here, okay, I have a link to a YouTube video because I said I was going to be making YouTube videos. Here's just some snapshots of my Canvas course, and you can see that I've embedded videos in there. And then here's some SPOI feedback from my modern algebra class in the fall of 2018. So you can see that I'm asking questions, I'm collecting feedback, and the stuff that I want to include into the annual report, I'll include. You don't have to include anything, but it's a good idea to try and include some things. And then here's other reflections on other classes that maybe I don't teach as often, or I didn't want to emphasize as much. Okay. Then there's the research section, submitted a paper, facilitated a student research project, and applied for some research support. And you can see here are the publications for the year. Here are the students that I advised. Here are the grants that I applied for or won. Here's a new seminar that we started in the department. So I try to add some pictures too, just to tell a little bit of a story there. And then finally you have the service section. And again, it's just done, 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 and done. And here are the committees that I served on. And as an appendix to this, I usually try to include letters from the chairs of those committees that are thanking me for my service. Or if I get a letter from a journalist saying thank you for your referee report or whatever, I document that and I put that as an appendix to this report. And finally, there's just kind of a final evaluation. It's only a few paragraphs. That's always sufficed. I mean, your department chairs have to read all of these from, sometimes up to 30 to 40 faculty. So I think they appreciate it if you keep things concise and short and sweet. So then I sign that, I give that to the department chair. Okay, your department chair will read that, and then they will give you an annual evaluation. And if you can't look at this too closely, but if you did, you'd say, okay, they're listening which classes you're teaching. The department chair is taking some of the things that I talked about in my annual report and put that into this report. And then you can see here, exceeds expectations because I documented the things that I did to exceed expectations. Again, another report based on, all the students that I advised or whatever. This exceeds expectations, meets expectations, or does not meet. Those are the only 3 criteria. And then for service, again, I guess this was a good evaluation. And at the very end, it just says overall satisfactory or overall unsatisfactory. So if you are smart and you don't go overboard in all your PDP plans, you should easily meet expectations or exceed expectations. That's just my 2 cents. I want to emphasize that your PDP is a plan and things can change. Obviously with the global pandemic, things have changed drastically. And so some of the things that I put in my plan, I maybe didn't get to do. I didn't get to go to a certain conference because the conference was canceled. But you can, at any time in the year, sit down with your chair and say, hey, I'm not going to meet this goal, and this is the reason. And I would get there okay on that ahead of time as opposed to waiting till the end of the year to update your PDP. I think you can even, at any time, change the PDP and get it re-signed by your chair, especially like if it's something that's out of your control. Another good idea is if for some reason, like let's say that you were going to be a co-PI in a grant and you were planning on submitting that, and then the PI in the grant says, well, I don't want to do that this year, I can't do that, then have the PI write a letter to your chair saying, we're not going through this plan, even though we put all this work in because of this reason. There's one grant that I just didn't apply for because of COVID-19, and I didn't want to bring students on campus. The whole thing just didn't make sense to me to try and apply and do it this year with the current situation. But one of my colleagues had put it in her PDP that we were going to apply again, and she asked me to write a letter to the chair saying, hey, we're not going to write this grant, this is the reason why, and he was totally fine with that. So that's my short and sweet summary of what to do for a PDP. Again, there's a template on the Provost website, and keep these important dates in mind right here. September 7th, March 31st. That's not a big gap of time there. And then you have to start drafting a PDP on May 6th. Although once you've written one, it's not too hard to write another one. It's a lot of copy and paste. Thanks for your time. I hope you guys have a great year, teach beautifully, and yeah, enjoy.